The Washington Post, WashingtonPost.com, and Washington Post Live on Comcast Sportsnet present the National Video Podcast.
I mean, yeah.
Well, you know what? You segued right into baseball, which is nice. O's and Nats renewing acquaintances just up the road in Baltimore, playing 3 games. O's took 2 of 3 from the Nats. It was interesting. Last time the O's and Nats played, the Nationals needed to sweep the series to sort of get even on the season, records between the two. We come back a few weeks later, and here they are again. The Orioles with a 3-game advantage on the Beltway series here of the two teams. Which team, though, is in better shape coming into this, midweek series here?
Well, it's hard to say because I think you have to go back to before the season started. What were the expectations for the Orioles? What were the expectations for the Nationals? The Nationals were supposed to be historically bad. I think you said they were going to be historically bad.
No. Oh, wait. I want you to find that tape.
Well, anyway, the Orioles were, supposedly better. They beefed up the bullpen, spent $42 million on relief pitchers, and would be a 500 club this season. Well, they got to 500 at the 1/3 poll. They were 27-27, but also at that point, they were on track to score 40 fewer runs than they scored a year ago. So they've had pitching problems. The bullpen has melted down at times. The Nationals' expectations were low. So I would have to say going into this series, the Nationals probably look better than the Orioles do.
Yeah, and I think when you ask who's in better position right now, you have to differentiate between short-term and long-term. Short-term, yeah, probably the Orioles will win more games this year. They do have a more veteran team. They've spent more money. They have better players across the board. But if you look at this in terms of long-term, I would say the Nationals are clearly in a better position as a franchise than the Orioles, given the new stadium next year, this emphasis on the farm system, just the fact that you have a superstar, 22-year-old superstar in Ryan Zimmerman already in place. They're in position, I think, to be a big-time franchise in a couple of years. And the Orioles, I mean, frankly, they keep going backwards or stagnating. And we're going on our 10th year here.
Well, it's true.
With a losing team in Baltimore. 10 years, a decade.
I think the Orioles did well in the draft. I think their first-round pick could be in the big leagues next year. He's that good. He's a solid choice. Switch-hitting catcher with power. And I think the Nationals drafted well too. I think Ross Detweiler looks like the real deal. But, Wieters, I think, has to make the big leagues quickly for the Orioles because I think the Orioles need a new guy, whether, again, maybe they're successful in attracting Mark Teixeira to the Orioles as a free agent. I mean, he would be a face of the franchise. They've lacked since Cal Ripken retired.
Do you think Wieters could be ready to go in the catching position where you would think he has to handle a staff that quickly?
The scouts I've talked to say they think that if the Orioles had wanted Wieters to catch Sunday afternoon, he could have caught Sunday afternoon.
Wow, that's Joe Mauer-like, who shot right up there almost straight out of high school. The bigger thing is if you go to Camden Yards this week to watch these games, take a peek at the scoreboard because the Jumbotron actually might have a piece of it that doesn't work. It might look a bit odd up there with one of the quadrants not working. Talk about, 10 straight years of futility. Things are getting old quickly in Baltimore. The Jumbotron, the team is saying, is pretty much outdated and ready to go.
It's hard to find parts for a Yugo. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Well, it was state-of-the-art when they built it, right?
It was state-of-the-art, but the Orioles have been trying to get it replaced for 7 years, and the Stadium Authority hasn't done it, and the Ravens are involved in this whole mess as well because when the Ravens ballpark was built, they got state-of-the-art HD video screens. Well, the Orioles are still living with the technology of the early 90s, and it just doesn't work anymore.
Does that speak to a larger issue where the Orioles and the Ravens are very much in competition with one another?
Clearly in Baltimore they are. I mean, it's not a huge market in terms of revenues that can be brought in, and there's just not that big of a pie to share. And absolutely, the Ravens and Orioles are in competition for the dollars from the pockets of the fans.
In years past, when the Colts were still in town, the Colts were the dominant franchise in Baltimore, despite the fact the Orioles were outstanding. 1960 to 85, no team was better in baseball than the Orioles, but. When the Colts left town, it opened the door for the Orioles, and they achieved new levels of prosperity at the turnstile. When the Ravens came back, Baltimore was ready to embrace pro football again, and the Orioles picked the wrong time in their history to hit the skids. I mean, they were in first place wire to wire in '97. The Ravens got there the previous year. They were still playing at the old park. Once the new park was open and the personal seat licenses were sold, and they were in the Super Bowl literally overnight. And the Orioles got left in the dust.
It really did change everything. the Super Bowl year for the Ravens. I mean, that was the coming out of the Ravens and sort of their reclaiming of Baltimore as a football city.
And it is worth pointing out that there's only a difference in average attendance this year between Oriole Park at Camden Yards and RFK Stadium of about 1,200, give or take a few fans per game. The Nationals ranked 26th in attendance. The Orioles ranked 24th in attendance this year. And Philly, you would say that even if the Nationals went away, it's not like the Orioles are going to get all those fans.
Well, you go back to 2004, before the Nationals came to town, and then you look at the Orioles' attendance in 2005. Well, in those two seasons, their attendance is almost the same. Yet in 2005, the Nationals drew 2.7 million fans. I mean, I think that the people who have chosen the Nationals have embraced the Nationals, and the Oriole fans will always be Oriole fans. I mean, clearly, I think the struggles of the last 9 years have probably cost them a few ticket sales here and there, but the people who like the Orioles are still going to check the box scores every morning. They're still going to check the standings. They still want to know how they did.
Mm-hmm. And with the Nationals, Dave, you brought up Ryan Zimmerman, a shooting star in the league. Phil, in your article today in the Examiner, you said that if the Nationals are going to get one All-Star, Ryan Zimmerman would be a fine and deserving choice right there. You could also make the argument right now, Dave, for Dimitri Young. He's probably playing as well as anybody right
Absolutely. Dimitri Young has just been on fire. This guy has hit 500 for basically a month, which is absolutely unheard of. I mean, that is as hot as you'll ever see anybody, from Ichiro to Derek Jeter to A-Rod. 500 over a month is remarkable. And yeah, I mean, he could be their all-star right now. I mean, if you had to stop the voting and pick a team right now, he's the most deserving guy on the Washington Nationals.
Well, you look at what he's done and where he came from a year ago, and my point in the column was that he missed out on postseason play last year. The Tigers released him September 6th, and he had to watch the playoffs on television. I think he's a target of probably a number of teams right now who see that left-handed bat. I mean, a switch hitter, obviously, but a guy who hits line drives from both sides of the plate. He can play first base. He's not a great first baseman, but we've seen worse.
Better in the American League,
That's right.
Clearly.
That's right. And I got to believe that Dimitri Young is going to end up in a pennant race with somebody.
Yeah, and this could turn out to be one of the great moves by Jim Bowden, the GM of the Nationals, picking up a guy who admittedly had drug and alcohol problems, and that was one of the reasons why the Tigers released him right before the playoffs last season. He comes in, keeps his nose clean, hits like a monster, and now he's becoming the best trade bait anyone could ever ask for.
And everybody on the club will tell you he's the best teammate. He is a good guy and gets along with everybody, and I think whatever residual dark cloud is left from last season is almost gone.
And I think it was clear all along that Dimitri Young was on this team for one purpose, and that was to play well and get traded and bring something back in return, a young player or two. And that's clearly going to happen. The only question is, you got to do it quickly, sell high. They bought low. He's only cost them $500,000, and you got to sell high, and his value is never going to be higher than it is right now.
I love it. It's like we're heating up the mid-season hot stove right now.
Absolutely.
Talking about all this
and
stuff.
Ronnie Belliard's another guy who could be in the same boat.
Yeah, and Christian Guzman's starting to play well for the Nets, too. I don't know how much trade value he has because of his contract at this point.
Issue there,
but he could be an all-star as well. You might want to throw him into the mix. Hey, we got a lot more to come on Washington Post Live. Redskins...
For more Washington sports coverage, watch Washington Post Live Monday through Friday from 5 to 6:30 p.m. on Comcast Sportsnet. The Nationals Baseball Video Podcast is produced by Comcast Sportsnet, The Washington Post, and WashingtonPost.com.